Hello, everyone. Welcome to our welcome to our panel here. A very exciting topic: how to reach mass adoption for Polkadot. For who of you guys is this the first Polkadot event? Okay, some people. Cool. Welcome to the Polkadot conference here, and nice to have you guys here. I hope you guys are learning a lot about what we are building in Polkadot. And today we want to focus specifically on mass adoption, what we are doing, and how we can actually increase traction outside our ecosystem. My name is Zoe. I'm Global Head Ambassador for Polkadot, and I also lead growth for Phala network, a parachain on Kusama in Polkadot. And I'm here with 4 fantastic speakers today. Very, very nice mix because we have like Lucas and Branger from Lucas from Centrifuge and Branger from Composable Finance, but they're both building a parachain. And then we have Toma and Domen, who are actually doing more tool sets in the ecosystem. We had a slide with your titles, but welcome Lucas. He's actually co-founder of Centrifuge, Branger, co-founder and CEO of Composable Finance. Toma leads growth for Supercolony, and Domen is CMO and co-founder of Authrail. Big applause for our speakers, please.
Hey.
Thanks.
Thank you. Is it working? Test?
Yeah. No?
Test.
No.
Hey.
We don't have any
okay,
audio.
good. Before we start here. Maybe we can...
Okay, this is better.
Cool.
Yes.
Great.
Okay. Hi, everyone.
Works? Yep.
Hello.
So let's start with a little warm-up question here. I would like to hear from you guys, where do you currently see Polkadot on an adoption phase compared to other ecosystem? And especially because, the Genesis blog of Polkadot was, 2020, right? Like, so actually 2 years ago, the relay chain actually were produced, and we started to build on top of it. Parachains were launched end of 21. So in comparison to all the other ecosystems that are out there for quite a while, where do you see us like on this level? And Lucas, let's start with you, because you actually started to develop on Ethereum, right? And then decided to come over to Polkadot at one point.
I would summarize it as very early. I think the fact that actually the Genesis block was 2 years ago almost hurts us, because when you think of what happened in the last few years, it was mostly still building, because parachains didn't really go live until early this year, right? And without efficient cross-chain messaging, parachains are quite hard to make actually useful. So I think it's still super early. I think what Polkadot is trying to do is technically very different than what a lot of the EVM chains are doing, and so that does mean that you're starting from scratch on a lot of things. You get the opportunity to do a lot of those things better. You don't have all this history. And I think that's where the big chances for Polkadot, but it also does mean that building all this is still taking time. But I think with the stuff that's happening now, right, most parachains actually started deploying significant functionality on their parachains, sort of like in the ecosystem. You have wallets starting to get built and more front ends, block explorers, all this tooling that we all need. That hopefully at some point we will see we'll see the hockey stick.
Cool, thanks. Let's do the round for this opening question, Branger.
Yeah, so my perspective is basically that I think it is also very early, but that I think one of the major use cases of parachains should be like core infrastructure for actually reaching out and providing functionalities to other ecosystems. As we saw, like the growth of L2s and sidechains in the EVM context, as well as like the Solana hype cycle that happened last year, and then the Avalanche hype cycle as well. What was apparent was that a lot of these ecosystems essentially had kind of like inroads into the sort of Ethereum mainnet community, as well as like the applications that were building on mainnet originally decided to become cross-chain and multi-chain by deploying into those ecosystems. And also you sort of saw this like growth of developers just wanting to explore these other ecosystems for sort of having this first mover advantage. And none of this has really trickled into the Polkadot ecosystem. And so I think that it is kind of on every parachain team to do its best to reach out to other ecosystems and to create those partnerships and relationships and APY and TVL opportunities. I also think that the concept of the Kusama and Polkadot communities as being kind of one community is kind of like not really real. And I actually believe that the type of community that you want to create an initial user base for DeFi is exactly the type of community that exists on Kusama. These kind of like DeFi degens that came in with kind of small bags, but essentially were able to participate in a variety of different opportunities and now have some actual capital to deploy across multiple ecosystems. So I do think that over time, at least our team is interested in like heavily cultivating and targeting the Kusama strategy to sort of like rebirth what it means to be a DeFi degen on Kusama, and just .Sama as a whole, and then sort of seeing from there, can we also attract additional quote-unquote degens from other ecosystems as well through this strategy.
Cool, thanks. And I mean, you do it also through a specific technological integration, where we talk about this later. Toma, your perspective. You guys, I mean, are not a parachain, right? You provide tool sets, even funding projects in the ecosystem. I'd love to hear your opinion on this.
Yeah, I definitely agree that we are on the early stage, but I want to believe that we are switching from so early stage to this early one, because right now we highlighted the problem of ecosystem development, of like lack of tooling. We should work on the community, do some public eye thing, and I think we did a good job during this last half of the year, ambassadors, leaders of parachains, and we go in the right way. Yeah, this is my thoughts.
Yeah, I think we're still super early in the development. We will need tools like you said to bring developers into the ecosystem. I think it was in Berlin in the code that someone said that there's 27 million of Web2 developers and 18,000 blockchain developers. So it's a niche of a niche right now. So to bring developers to this space, I think we're going to need to work on tools. We're going to need to work on use cases, and we're talking mass adoption. I think that the last 3 speeches had the word adoption in it, so I think we're going into the right way. We're at Authrail, we'll support it. We're building a platform that brings different parachains into under one roof. So I think, yeah, with projects like us, like super cool projects that were here in Paris, I think that we're moving towards the right direction.
Perfect. Yeah, thanks, Domen. And I mean, you guys even do a lot of education, as I know, about parachains, right? So you said you provide a platform integrating different type of parachains for Web2 developers to actually onboard them quicker into the Web3 world. Yeah, maybe you can touch a little bit on the education and also your biggest challenges or learnings that you actually had to build the platform and then get the feedback from Web2 developers to actually use the parachains that you integrate.
We actually started 2 years ago with a platform that provided identity to enterprise environment. So we've been actually talking to different audiences, not only developers, but to enterprises, agencies, corporations, and so on. And we've seen that the majority of them have the same problem. They don't want to change their everyday work. They don't want to disrupt their internal processes and so on. But they want to continue with the way they're doing work right now, plus getting some benefits from the decentralized world. So what we figured is that, okay, let's bring it under one roof. Let's bring parachains, functionalities, and use cases together. and start with the education. We need to spread the word about the use cases, the functionalities, about what each parachain teams are doing, in order to bring the Web2 developers into this world. We're currently in the building space stage, so yeah, we're obviously working on the education part together with you guys at Phala, with the Kilt team, Moonbeam, and so on. So I hope that in the next, let's say, couple of months, we're gonna roll out the platform and see what we've been working up so far.
Cool. Yeah, very excited about this. Great to have you also in the ecosystem from this perspective. Ranger, you touched base already on the integration between different ecosystems, right? And you guys are building very cool stuff, specifically combining IBC with XCM, right? I would like to hear from your perspective, because this technical integration has a lot of impact, of course, on the composable infrastructure. But how do you think this impacts the ecosystems, like individually, but also like maybe as a joint ecosystem, specifically because Cosmos and Polkadot have a very similar vision, right? And sometimes are seen as competitor.
Yeah, so I mean, I think there's a lot of primitives in the Cosmos ecosystem that we don't necessarily have at the moment, and I also think that there's some primitives that we have that the Cosmos ecosystem doesn't necessarily have. As an example, like when our bridge to Cosmos through IBC goes live, a Phala won't have to bridge AUSD anymore over to the Cosmos ecosystem using Wormhole. They can now use trustless bridging. So now that obviously creates like a new stablecoin within the Osmosis like DEX community, so they can actually build like a real 3 pool that has like fully decentralized stablecoins within it. So I think there's kind of like 2 core pieces as to why I'm excited about this. One is like from the technical perspective, but then there's also the philosophical perspective. And I think I can start with the philosophical one, which is I do think that the types of people who are in the Cosmos ecosystem are slowly moving away from maximalism, at least from the perspective of like, from what we've seen from, obviously we're like constantly in between people fighting about, Polkadot versus Cosmos. But actually the Cosmos community is very ready to start interacting with the Polkadot ecosystem. And I think, from my perspective as well, the Polkadot ecosystem, at least the Kusama community, is very interested in doing the same as well with respect to the Cosmos ecosystem. So I do think that from a philosophical perspective, this merging of 2 communities that are focused on interoperability and applications that are higher order in functionality, and being able to have, DEXs across Cosmos and Polkadot be able to like share liquidity between the 2 chains, or for instance having lending occur on one chain on Polkadot and swaps occurring on another chain on Cosmos. I think the like opportunity space becomes much bigger than we've previously seen, where we're all kind of like limited at the moment in the Polkadot ecosystem by needing to use XCM between 2 parachains only. Now we can talk about multi-hop protocols where you have XCM like for one step and then IBC for another step, and you can really build these like higher order applications. So I think from the perspective of like how can we create a user experience for a very simple application that lets people be able to create a portfolio across the Cosmos and Polkadot ecosystems, that's the type of infrastructure that we're providing for applications like this.
Cool. Thanks for sharing this. Lucas, you want to add anything on this?
So like we've been, you mentioned buildings like very early on in Ethereum as well, and I always was kind of like a multi-chain maxi. I never believed that we have the one true version of what a blockchain will ever be, and there will be many, many ways that people will get there. I think in the end, like a lot of these concepts are starting to look more and more similar, and we're figuring out as a whole industry what works and what doesn't. For example, Ethereum's charting designs are actually getting closer and closer to what like a Polkadot or even Cosmos with IBC looks like, just of how they think about it. And so, like, in a way, I think that's where we are today. So we're trying to experiment, and I think the more we can work together and learn from each other, actually, the faster this innovation will happen. And you can see, like, within Ethereum, the fact that what EVM is really great at is it creates a very simple interface for people to actually cooperate. I think that's like the key thing about smart contracts that Ethereum has, is like anyone can call a function, and that allows you to build, like anyone to build with any other contract. And I think that's where we need to get to in like the blockchain ecosystem overall, where like people will be able to build transactions across many chains and like plug stuff together using bridges. And the bridges we have today, they're really like it's the very early version of it, because mostly what they just support is like moving tokens from A to B, but that's not nearly as interesting as what you talked about, which is like use borrowing here to swap here and then like pay back something else here, right? And that's, I think, when we see like multiple chains really becoming useful.
Yes, multi-chain is the future. Good. Let's stick with you for a moment, Lucas. You gave a great presentation yesterday about Centrifuge and also mentioned governance, right? I think you're personally pretty passionate about governance. Yeah. We know that the governance in Polkadot itself is still slightly centralized. If you look about the council has a lot of power, right? We have the process is, it just takes a lot of time, and there's still a lot of people that can influence things quite a lot. Very much different than an ecosystem like Bitcoin, right? Where it's completely or extremely decentralized, I would say. What do you think we can learn from this? And I mean, we know there's governance 2.0 coming up, right? What do you think we can learn from this for how our governance should be improved, if it should be improved from your perspective?
I mean, I would say Bitcoin's governance is basically just try to resist any change at all as long as you can, and make it extremely hard. And that is meaning they're very conservative, not innovating really, and some people like it because maybe as a store of value that's helpful, but obviously they're not able to keep up with anything that any other blockchain is doing. I think we are still like very much at the startup phase of crypto, right? And so like we do need to be able to innovate quickly. And the problem with governance is that it's actually not innovating quickly. The more people you have that try to make a decision, the harder it actually is to innovate and to make decisions that are maybe seen as risky, right? And so you end up like always trying to go for like the least maybe the version that has the least opposition, not the version that has the highest expected outcome, right? Like you can go one way, no one objects it, but everyone knows, okay, it's going to maybe solve the problem, but unlikely it will just not make the problem worse. And then you have something that has like they can maybe fix it, and it's super hard to do it, but like if we really do get there, right, that's where we want to get to. The problem is like with any large organization, right, as a startup versus corporate, like the enterprise versus like a giant state, right, there's always a challenge in this innovation. Not to go too far on a tangent, but that's like, I think really important to keep in mind when you're thinking about governance. Actually, you are building a system to make decisions that involves many different people. And you're trying to do really, like you're either building a political system or some like company management structure, right? Like you can look at those structures and see, okay, like that's where you can start. I think, I mean, for us actually, the idea that runtime upgrade can happen through governance is extremely powerful, because what Ethereum always had problems with is like their hard forks are 1,000 times hard, probably more than 1,000 times harder than a runtime upgrade in terms of how you coordinate in the community. But the problem is now, of course, it's very easy to kind of go down the slippery slope of centralizing your runtime upgrade process, your like how you decide what's getting built in this, and that's then not decentralized. If you build a crypto project and there's only one team able to run it, to develop it, that the entire community is dependent on, then you're not building a decentralized project, right? Because in the end, that whoever is doing that, they hold the protocol hostage. So now, of course, like you have to start somewhere, and a lot of people are willing to compromise in the beginning, right? When you don't have a community, there's no one else to do it, so obviously you need to start somewhere. But I think, luckily, we do have a lot of tools in Polkadot. And yes, governance 2 is going to make it a lot better to actually start doing this. And I would actually say, like, I recently checked, and I do think this is quite embarrassing, but more than half of the parachains still use a pseudo key, which really isn't the idea. Like, we have democracy proposals at council, we have all this stuff actually to start asking the community to decide what should happen to the chain. And we do this actually, like Centrifuge, I think we got rid of, 6 weeks after launch, we got rid of the pseudo key. And that was, I think, an important step that I think most people should dare to try.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of treasuries or councils are still not launched, right? Maybe it's not the focus for the parachains itself to like go into the whole governance process, but I think you break it down nicely to see, okay, we have like the technological integration of like decentralized governance. Now, on top, we have a lot of like, through the council, a lot of things and processes that are maybe not still, yeah, a bit more centralized, but the architecture and the vision is there. That's cool. Toma, I want to hear from your perspective, because you're building the Polkadot Alliance. You gave a presentation about it yesterday, which also is like, yeah, you can see it as a small council in the Polkadot ecosystem, right? How do you want to change these, the centralization in our council and the governance with the Polkadot Alliance?
So firstly, if we're talking from the experience, right now to get the treasury proposal, I think most of you knows how it's hurtful right now, how much time it will takes. So yeah, Polkadot Alliance is going to change this flow. It will be pretty decentralized because like the members of Polkadot Alliance is the key players of the ecosystem, is an innovators, leader of parachains. So it will be based on government 2.0 somehow. And yeah, it will be faster in a few times. It will be easier to get the support from the community and funding for your needs and project. So yeah, the purpose of that was just to speed up the ecosystem growth. I think it's the most important, because right now it's not work like it should be.
Cool. I'm very excited about the Alliance to come. I would like to dive deep into a bit more like technical tooling questions, because we know, I think we have the best tech, right? As a blockchain, Polkadot is very strong on that side. I think adoption, marketing, there are a lot of things that we can learn and improve, but it's a very special architecture in general. So actually, yeah, let's start to talk a little bit about Ink. Toma, you guys are big Ink promoters at Supercolony, right? Where do you see actually, the future of Ink, specifically in comparison to like other smart contract platforms like Cofounder that Composable is also using? And I would like to hear your opinion on this afterwards as well.
Yeah, we're working on Ink adoption and improving this experience for 1 year, I guess. We have created already 4 tools for smart contract development. One of them is OpenBrush. So it's a library for develop smart contracts. And from Supercolony perspective, we think it's really important to work not only from attracting developers, but to create the use cases on that. We could create like 10 of the tools, right? And if no one will use it, it not works. No businesses there, no leaders. Why we created that? So, and I think it's what we should do right now is to create use cases on this tool and support it by the ecosystem. Because like, why some people from Ethereum, when it's like easy to do, it's like really, we see the flow, how it works, right? To hire some Solidity developers, deploy it on Ethereum, it works. Right now, we have some smart contracts hub for deploying Ink, and it's like contract pilot not work itself right now. And really important to mention that the relay chain itself was not created for smart contracts. So it's not easy to do, first of all. Like we bring the working thing from another ecosystem, and we should build these conditions to make it work, right? And what is more, I think parachain should work and should work and focus on ink too, because right now only Parity and we are working on that, and the process is so slow. And other parachain who want to work with this contract pilot should contribute and implement some solutions.
We do as well at Phala Network.
Yeah.
Okay, very good, very interesting perspective. Brenda, from your perspective, please.
Yeah, so I think for us, so when you look at like WASM smart contracting already that's out there, COSM WASM, there's already like hundreds of use cases out there. There's already CW20 tokens in the billions of TVL getting moved around every single day. There's more than 15 plus chains that already integrate COSM WASM. They have a huge developer community already, and it's also very generic, so it's not necessarily tied to the underlying consensus state. And so when we looked at COSM WASM as a framework, we said, okay, let's strip out all like the Tendermint bindings and basically build a COSM WASM VM as a palette onto a parachain. And actually it was obviously difficult to do, but like we've already demoed that has successfully worked. And so I think for us, not needing to educate people from ground zero about how to build a WASM smart contract to do X, Y, Z. Like basically, the moment COSM WASM is deployed on Picasso, you can copy paste all of the applications from Juno, from Osmosis, from all these different, from like Terra Classic, Terra 2.0, et cetera, and just deploy them onto Picasso. I think that's very powerful because there's basically very limited adjustments necessary for now these types of COSM WASM applications to go multi-chain as in the same way that like Sushi went multi-chain by just deploying the same code on multiple different chains. So I think for us, the decision to go all in on COSM WASM was more so just a, I think in general, it's basically just has adoption at the moment. There's use cases at the moment. It's well maintained, and I think it really fits the substrate use case quite nicely.
Yeah, and I want to share the really interesting insight after WASM conference that we hosted on May. It was like 800 online attendees, and when we did the report, surprisingly for me, more than 60% of attendees was CEO and business leaders, not builders. Like mostly the conference was focused on technical stuff, but you see the problem that business leaders doesn't see like WASM and contracts on Polkadot as a solution. It's a problem. They are looking for the answer, but they couldn't see that. We focus on builders. Okay, it's really important, but we should show some use cases, how it's really work. Why it's better to do it on a Polkadot, not on Ethereum.
Exactly, yeah, to follow up, we need to think about the adoption among enterprises. We need to think about use cases, tangible use cases that will be used by the enterprise environment, because otherwise we're just preaching to those that think the same and not bringing new people, new companies into the environment.
But I mean, there are also like two different levels, right? Like on adoption side, you mentioned enterprise focus, but you have the developers directly. You have Web 2, Web 3 developers. Then you have like the corporates and so on. How do you differentiate between these different focus groups, I would call, or customers when you actually create your developer tools?
I think that we need to focus on those on the developers, but to explain how they can sell the use cases to the enterprises, because otherwise we will not reach mass adoption if the enterprise environment is going to be using it, and if we'll be talking to those that will use it only, will build it only for the people that are, I don't know, sitting in small rooms. So to bring that up again. Yes, we're talking a lot to the developers, but we are bringing the use cases that the economy, that the real economy can use in front of it. So they know what they have to do to bring it up. One use case like this was from the European Union, digital product passport. It's going to be used by the manufacturing companies in Europe. So yeah, this is the things that we need to focus on. This is the things that we need to work on, and this is why we're building the platform, to provide the developers with the tools to work on their use cases.
Cool. Thanks for sharing, Domen. I want to go there into this more mass adoption and zoom out perspective in a bit, but I want to dive a bit more deeper into some other developer tools. I actually went to the Solana Hacker House on Monday, I think. It was my first hacker house. It was pretty cool, actually. Got to learn a lot about the Solana ecosystem, and also actually learned that they are building I don't know if it's a new language, but Solang. It's actually a language that they use to compile Solidity to to Rust, right? Or for substrate-based chains and everything. And I mean, we have substrate, right? We have substrate palettes to actually do this. How do you see? And maybe we start with Brendan. How do you see this this language? Do you think it will, or this compiler language? Does it have a future? And especially in comparison to the tools that we are offering.
I mean, I think what's important to realize is that Rust as a framework for building decentralized technologies is probably going to be the winner long term. I do think that there is, even within the Ethereum community, a shift to create Rust-based tooling. Georgios from Paradigm keeps on shipping different things, different tooling around just Rust-based tooling for Ethereum. And so I think there is this shift where basically, CosmWasm is also Rust, substrate palettes Rust as well. So I do think over time there will be this shift that everybody in the sort of decentralized technologies community should be proficient in the Rust-based context. And I think it was really salient of the founders of Polkadot to build Substrate using Rust because it just really attracts a different class of developer than Solidity smart contract writers.
Lucas, what's your opinion on this?
I think Rust in the backend makes a lot of sense. Rust is extremely powerful, but with great power comes great responsibility, as people say. The thing that Solidity is extremely good at is it's giving you a very, very small space to work in. So if you're actually building a token, for example, the transfer function doesn't have anything besides the actual instructions of what it is, and it's extremely concise to read what it does. And so if you're building a lot of small different components, that makes it very easy to make them safe and not think about all the other potential things that could go wrong around it. And I believe that is and I've been writing a lot of smart contract code. I've been reading a lot of it, auditing a lot of it. I think that does make it ultimately one of the safer languages to build stuff in. But it is just all about the tooling. I think if we can, so for that, actually, Solidity has done a lot of good stuff to just let you basically build these applications in the safest way possible today, because it's like building a rocket, right? You can't afford to crash because otherwise you have billions in dollars of research and development costs that just blow up in the atmosphere, and so that I think Solidity really has a lot of lessons that we can learn from, especially around the developer tooling. Maybe also some of the language features. I think Rust has the language features that make it inherently a safe language. What we don't have yet is we don't have the all the other tooling and the way to actually kind of a style to write Rust in that makes it safe. We're learning that with palettes, but I would say still it's harder to audit them. It's harder to see what they're actually doing. And kind of even review, right? What a palette is, how it's deployed, what a chain does. You can look on Etherscan what a smart contract does, and the kind of verify actually what it does, which is almost impossible to do for any parachain out there. I would probably assume that like if I tried as a layman, like try to actually just look at the code, I wouldn't even know where to start. Right? It would take me several hours. And I think that this is the part where we need to kind of still improve on Rust and other like also WASM-based smart contract languages.
And I mean, do you think this compiler language will have a future? Because again, we have substrate WASM, right? It's like actually, do you need another compiler language actually?
I don't know. I don't actually know if is Solong a Solidity transpiler, or is it? I'm not sure how it works. So can't answer that.
Compiler language, yeah, from Solidity to Solana and Substrate as well.
Okay.
I think it compiles to WASM directly, if I'm not mistaken, like from Solidity to WASM, not to Rust. So yeah, and that Solidity has a lot of the limitation. I think it's a problem here, but it could be a good entering point from Solidity dev, like to show the advantages of WASM. But we created the alternative version of that. It's called Sol to Ink. So it will highlight how Substrate is cool and awesome. Like it's compiled from Solidity directly to Ink, and then you could change the ink and go there. So for example, you want to switch your DAX from Solidity and Ethereum ecosystem to Polkadot, you can switch it to Ink and then add some improvement that Ink has, but not Solidity has. And it will be compiled to WASM. So, and like in 2 weeks, for example, you will have the project on Ink. And I think here it is important that by this tool, what we could do, like OpenBrush and Sol to Ink, to show the business how much time and money they could save on that. For example, using OpenBrush and Sol to Ink and other tools, you could save half of the year of development. You can hire not 5 developers, but 1 from Ink, like who knows Ink, for example. Yeah, and it will attract more use cases here. I think it's all of us should work on that more, on these researches, and to show it to the people, not just be on this bubble.
There's also this thing called Ethereum FE. I don't know if you guys have heard of that, but all of these things like Solidity, Rust, Situation, transpiling, this stuff is like 2 years away easily. So yeah, that's just my 2 cents.
Can you say what Ethereum FE is?
It's basically you write contracts in Rust and then deploys into the EVM.
Okay. I mean, kind of like so like the Solidity team already built Yule, which is this like intermediary language that should allow people to build contracts in other languages, compile them to Yule, and then compile that into EVM. I think that actually could be an interesting way for Polkadot also to look at, like creating a Yule to WASM, basically. And that is one of the reasons actually why Ethereum started with Yule, is like because they wanted to be able to build into the EVM, but also at the time eWASM, Ethereum WASM was kind of like an actively researched project. But now you kind of have this like intermediary layer that isn't fully optimized, but it's much lower level than Solidity and other languages, so you can like easily plug in both like different backends and front ends, like languages that get pushed into it. And I think that's like there's a lot of interesting stuff there that you can take and kind of like also look at Ink of like how you could get that into Yule and, for example, allow people to deploy Ink contracts on Ethereum, which it could be interesting actually.
Yeah, let's discuss this further after this panel. There are a lot of good ideas here. We have 5 minutes left, and I would like to zoom out a little bit more. We went very deep into like the tooling set, and I would like to hear from all of you. And Domen, maybe you want to start. What do you see the biggest opportunity for Polkadot to become more mass adopted? Let it be really on the technological level to say, okay, XCM is the future, you know, to go cross-chain, or a specific use case that you see is only possible on top of Polkadot. Where do you see the opportunity for our protocol?
I think that the biggest future, I think, is in the enterprise adoption. Again, I'm going to go there. I think that bringing multiple different use cases into the environment is going to boost the adoption and bring more developers into the ecosystem. Having us as one of the gateways to different functionalities of different parachains, hoping that we can do our job to bring developers into this ecosystem.
Thanks. Toma.
Yeah, I agree with the thoughts, and what I want to add that we should go outside this bubble of Polkadot and just to show that the ecosystem, for example, going to some Web Summit, I don't know, Ethereum things, because right now it's feel like I'm attending more than 5 conferences like on this for like 4 months, and I meet up the same people all the time. Like, and we're talking, yeah, it's cool. Yeah, let's work on that and share with some people who you already know, these things. So maybe we should go and do it wider. This is the main thing that we should look.
Yeah, I very much so agree. I think we're definitely one of the biggest proponents of that for sure. But yeah, as far as like from a technological perspective, I actually think that there is a possibility that Substrate becomes the piece of Polkadot infrastructure that leaves the Polkadot ecosystem. So like Substrate-based rollups on top of Celestia, or perhaps having parachains become settlement layers for like rollups in some other ecosystem. So I do think that for me, the biggest reason, the most bullish part about Polkadot, I think, is the Substrate framework. And I think that over time, as long as more use cases can be shown for palettes and reasons for Substrate to actually leave the Polkadot ecosystem are apparent, then I think that could be the piece of technology that really goes cross-ecosystem.
Cool. Yeah, all in Substrate. Lucas.
We've always focused on bringing like real-world borrowers and lenders into DeFi. So already today we've like financed over 190,000 loans, I think, to like different people all around the world. And so a lot of these people didn't even know that their money came from, actually 99.9% probably don't know that their money came from DeFi. And so like it is something that we're doing every day, I think. And ultimately there, like, it's not about blockchains, it's about like, okay, what is the problem you're solving? And I think DeFi is solving the problem of building a radically more efficient and transparent financial system. And that is a very attractive proposition to a lot of fintechs, a lot of well, not the banks that are in power today, but like competitors. If they want to build a better bank, right, like they're going to look at it and say, actually, like if I use DeFi as my backend, if I finance loans on the blockchain, that's actually like a way that I can be competitive. I can build a more scalable, future-proof business. So that's what we focus on in all of this.
Cool. So you're doing it already on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Trying to. No, great. Thank you for sharing these insights. It's very cool. And I think we had like a great overview of really seeing, where we can go, where we need to improve. And I loved really this different perspectives here on this panel from really parachain builders and ecosystem tool providers. I think we have some time, 1 minute. So if there's, or 2 questions, are there any questions from the audience to the speakers directly or anything you would like to emphasize on? Yeah, I see a question from Crust Network there. There's still? 2 questions. Okay, cool.
Okay, hi. One question regarding the assumption that Rust is going to become like the dominant language and force in smart contract development. I would like that to be true. I've been developing like smart contracts for the past 5-6 years. But to me, it seems that now there's a very big road ahead in terms of built out smart contract libraries that are alive on Solidity, which are going to be very, very difficult to, you know, just the very, let's say if I'm not thinking as an engineer, if I'm thinking as a business person, and I see that I have this already built out infrastructure in Solidity that I don't have to code my own contracts, or if I code them, I can reuse a lot of the stuff from before. And in Rust, now I have to do all of these things from scratch. It might happen that it's too late for us to replace the base, and we'll just end up with Solidity being like the JavaScript of blockchain. Yeah.
I would encourage you to look at Composable in more depth because, like, it's not like, for instance, in Solidity we have like the compound ERC20 governance token, right? We have like the compound lending market model. We have like Uniswap v2 that everybody forks. So we have like these incredibly forkable things within the Solidity context that have been tested by like hundreds of protocols. But within the Composable context, like the use cases are there. The TVL has also been there and is currently still there. And so I think over time, Composable is definitely catching up, if not already. There's some great DEXs built already. Mars protocol is a lending protocol built on Composable as well. So I do think the libraries for Composable will definitely, maybe not this year, but like next year, hopefully there's enough applications and enough exploits to test these applications and their security, or not that we want exploits to happen, but one of the reasons why like these libraries in Solidity are so used is because you know they're safe, right? Because you've seen how people have been able to exploit them. So over time, I do think that Composable will definitely catch up.
I mean, I could say the same thing for Substrate. I mean, I believe like Substrate has a lot of the, like the account abstraction model, like giving you proxies, multi-sigs, batch calls, like democracy at a base level, different ways of locking tokens. Like all of this stuff is actually like 3-4 years ago were a novelty in Ethereum, and like, yeah, like Cosmos built the first governance thing that was widely used. The first farming contract was built by Synthetics many years ago, and everyone uses that now, right? But like that's as simple as just like locking some tokens in a palette and Substrate, creating a token as well. So I don't know. Like, I think actually not so much the Solidity libraries and more the testing and the tooling is currently what's probably pulling a lot of people into Ethereum. I know like if I want to write a palette and try to run it, like if I know nothing about it, it's going to take me hours and hours to just set it up. I can go to Remix and launch a smart contract and have an ERC20 token up and running by just Googling it within 5 minutes, right? And that's, I think, where we need to make it easier. And then on the other side, like the auditing tools, right? Like they're just quite far ahead to like once you've built something, make it safe.
Thank you for answering this question. Do we have time for one more? I know that there was one more question. If we can take it.
Hi, Lut here from Crust Network. We talked about developer adoption quite a lot, and I think when I can trust the numbers and metrics we see is that Polkadot is actually doing quite well on the number of active developers, especially also when we look at the growth of the numbers of developers. But one thing I was missing a little bit in this discussion is the end user itself. And I think that's also where mass adoption starts. We need to onboard the user. And compared to other ecosystems, I think it can be quite challenging especially for newcomers to get used to using the Polkadot ecosystem with all those different parachains and bridges and forth and back. So what's your take on that? And how can we maybe improve that in the future? Thank you.
Yeah, very good question. And I think that's definitely, I think maybe more for the parachains again, because you actually need the end users in the end, right?
Yeah, I mean, I gave a talk about this yesterday. But basically what we're building with XCVM, so like this idea of single contract deployment and being able to pass messages across multiple chains, multiple ecosystems, using a variety of bridges and having a proxy wallet to just handle all the signatures required for that. That's essentially what we're trying to do. So I do think that even though the vision of like XCVM goes much further than Polkadot, I do think that one of the key use cases for it would actually be just like having parachains, building applications on top of like 2, 3, 4 parachains and not having it be a mess of Polkadot.js, basically. Also on the UX perspective, there is like Talisman and a few other like new wallet providers that are making the experience much more streamlined than Polkadot.js, but definitely the interoperability from a UX perspective is difficult, and I think the issue has been that we've seen interoperability. We thought about interoperability first before understanding what it actually means for the end user, and so we're basically like flipping the switch on that and saying interoperability is necessary for creating ease of use and delight for a user experiencing a new application for the first time.
Thanks for sharing. Anyone else wants to add on this? To this? Cool. Okay, I think then we are out of time here. Thank you so much again, everyone, for the speakers to join and for everyone joining to this panel. I think some of the speakers are available afterwards if you want to discuss more on some specific topic. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.